It was on page 4, 7 paragraphs of operational terms in a 1948 county easement instrument, and the one that mattered was paragraph 7. My father had insisted on including it when the county surveyor drafted the document. He had watched a neighbor spend years in litigation over a culvert someone else had installed on his access road, and he did not intend to repeat that experience. The clause read, "Any structure placed within the corridor without the easement holder's written authorization is an unauthorized obstruction. The easement holder may remove it upon 30 days written notice, at the installing party's expense, without court order or administrative proceeding." It had sat on page 4 of RE-1948-004 for 76 years without being used. In August 2021, the HOA installed iron gate posts on my road, 5 feet inside the monument line my father set in 1948, without asking. I sent the 30-day notice Monday morning. Day 30 was a Thursday. The contractor arrived at 7 a.m. with a concrete saw and a flatbed trailer. The eastern post came out of the ground at 8:05. By 11, both posts, the gate panels, and the Meadow Lane sign were on the trailer. The road was 23.9 feet wide again, exactly as recorded. It had been recorded that way since September 1948. Real quick before we start, comment your country down below, hit that like button, and subscribe so you never miss stories like this. The road had been there longer than Dale had. His father built it in the summer of 1948, starting from the county highway at the northern boundary of the Whitmore property and running south through the ranch in a straight line that followed the natural grade of the land, a 24-foot wide graded surface of compacted gravel and decomposed granite, cut by hand and by borrowed equipment over 2 summers, maintained by the family for the 76 years since. Dale had grown up watching his father grade it after every wet season, pack it after every hard use, set new drainage culverts when the old ones silted in. He had helped from the time he was tall enough to be useful, and had taken over full maintenance responsibility when he came back to the ranch in 2007, after 32 years as a civil engineer and licensed land surveyor for the state's infrastructure division. The road existed because the county had required it. When Dale's grandfather acquired the original land patent in 1947, the county surveyor's office had identified 4 parcels south of the Whitmore property that would be landlocked without a legal access corridor, parcels that the county expected to be developed or transferred at some future point, and that needed a recorded right of passage to reach the county highway. The county would not record the Whitmore land grant until a legal access corridor for those 4 parcels had been established in a recorded instrument. Dale's grandfather had agreed to the condition. His father had built the road and had the corridor surveyed by a licensed county surveyor, and in September of 1948, the instrument had been recorded, RE-1948-004, filed with the county recorder, establishing the Whitmore family's private road as a 24-foot easement corridor with 4 named downstream beneficiaries holding a right of passage. Dale had read the instrument for the first time at 17, sitting in the county recorder's office with his father, who had taken him there specifically to read it, not to summarize it, to read it. His father had believed that the difference between knowing what a document said and having read it yourself was the difference between borrowed knowledge and owned knowledge, and he applied that principle to every instrument that touched the ranch. Dale had read RE-1948-004 in its entirety at the wooden counter of the county recorder's office on a Tuesday afternoon in 1969, and had understood most of it. He had asked his father about the terms he did not understand. His father had explained them. He had gone home and written a summary in his field notebook in his own words, as a way of confirming that he had understood what he had read. The notebook was in the filing cabinet in the ranch house's 2nd bedroom, behind the tab labeled Road, Easement. The instrument was 5 pages. Its key provisions were organized in the way that 1948 county recording instruments were organized. Direct, plainly worded, without the architecturally complex syntax that contemporary legal documents favored. The easement corridor was described in metes and bounds over 2 pages, the bearing and distance of each segment identified against the survey monuments Dale's father had set in the summer of 1948. cut granite stones, 4 inches square, set flush with the grade at each corner, and at 50-foot intervals along the corridor's boundary. The remaining 3 pages address the easement's operational terms. The corridor width was 24 feet, measured from monument to monument at each cross-section. The Whitmore family held full ownership of the road surface, the corridor's subsurface, and the drainage infrastructure within the easement boundary. The Whitmore family held sole authority for road maintenance. The timing, method, materials, and funding of maintenance activities were entirely at the family's discretion. The 4 named downstream parcels held a right of passage only, the right to travel the road surface for access to and from the county highway, without any maintenance authority, management authority, or right to modify the road's physical condition. The instrument named the 4 parcels by their 1948 parcel identification numbers and their then current owners, none of whom had any surviving connection to any current property interest Dale was aware of. The unauthorized obstruction removal clause was on page 4, in language his father had insisted on including at the advice of the county surveyor, who had drafted the instrument. It read, "Any structure, installation, or obstruction placed within the easement corridor by a party other than the easement holder, without the written authorization of the easement holder, shall be considered an unauthorized obstruction. The easement holder shall have the right to remove any such obstruction upon 30 days written notice to the installing party, at the installing party's expense, without requirement of court order or administrative proceeding." His father had included it because he had watched a neighboring property's access road become permanently altered by an adjacent landowner who had installed a culvert in the wrong location, and the absence of a removal clause in that road's easement instrument had required years of litigation to resolve. The clause in RE-1948-004 had sat unused for 76 years. Dale had reread it 4 times in the past 3 years. He had retired to the ranch in 2007, the year his wife passed, returning to the land and the road and the cattle operation that his father had built and that had been running in reduced form during the decades of his state career. He had brought the operation back to its full capacity over 4 years: pasture restoration, herd rebuilding, the fencing and water system maintenance that decades of part-time management had deferred. He had also spent his first year back walking the road's full length with his survey instruments, reconfirming every monument, measuring every cross-section, recording the current condition in a new logbook that he started the week he moved back. The road was in good condition. The monuments were where his father had set them. The 24-foot corridor was intact and unobstructed. Ridgecrest Meadows had been built on the southernmost of the 4 named downstream parcels in 2009. 2 years after Dale's return. He had watched the construction from the ranch house porch, the grading, the utility work, the road's increasing traffic as the development took shape. He had written to the developer that year, a standard notification letter. The road was private property under RE-1948-004. The development's residents would hold a right of passage only. Any construction or modification within the easement corridor required his written authorization in advance. The developer had responded with a letter describing the road as a community access thoroughfare and citing the development's marketing materials, which called it Meadow Lane. Dale had checked the county recorder's index for any new easement instrument. None. He had written the developer's response date in his logbook, filed the exchange, and continued maintaining the road as he always had. The development had opened in late 2009. The HOA had formed in 2010, and by 2012 had begun collecting a $150 annual road maintenance fee from all 180 units, a fee listed in the HOA's CC&Rs as applicable to the maintenance of Meadow Lane, the development's access road. Dale had obtained the CC&R document from the county's HOA registration filing, which required annual disclosure. He had read the road maintenance fee provision. He had checked the county records. No instrument had been recorded giving the HOA any maintenance authority over the road. He wrote the fee structure in his logbook. HOA collecting $150 per unit per year, 180 units, $27,000 per year. No recorded authority. Total to date, accumulating. He did not write to the HOA about the fee in 2012. He noted it. He continued monitoring. The iron fence went up in August 2021. Dale had been watching for it. The HOA had sent a newsletter in July, announcing an entrance improvement project at what they called the Meadow Lane Northern Gateway, with a rendering showing stone pillars, iron gates, and a development sign. Dale had read the newsletter the same week it was distributed, because a neighbor with a mailbox on the county road had forwarded it to him after seeing the rendering. He had read it and checked the county permit records. The HOA had filed for a construction permit for the gate installation. The permit application described the installation site as HOA Common Area and did not reference RE-1948-004 or the Whitmore parcel address or any easement instrument. The county permit office had issued the permit without verifying the easement record. Dale had written to the HOA board the week the permit was issued, before the installation began, stating that the proposed gate installation was within the RE-1948-004 easement corridor, which was Whitmore property, and that no written authorization had been requested or granted. He requested that the installation be halted pending a review of the easement instrument and his written authorization. The HOA's president at that time, not Sandra, her predecessor, had responded, citing the development's marketing materials and the CC and R's Meadow Lane language. The installation proceeded in August. Dale had stood on his porch and watched the two stone pillar posts go in. The iron gate panels hung between them, the sign mounted on the left pillar, Ridgecrest Meadows, Meadow Lane. The posts sat on his road, inside his easement corridor, 5 feet inside the monument line on each side. He had walked down to the installation with his survey rod the morning after the crew left and measured the posts against the nearest monuments. Left post, 5.1 feet inside the eastern monument line. Right post, 5.0 feet inside the western monument line. The functional width between the posts and the gate panels was 13 feet 10 inches, call it 14 feet. The recorded corridor was 24 feet. He wrote the measurements in his logbook on the same page as the installation observation. Then he wrote one line below the measurements. Fence installation. No authorization requested. No authorization granted. Monitor. He had been monitoring for 4 years. Sandra Vane had become board president in 2022, a year after the fence was installed. She had a background in commercial property management and approached the HOA's affairs with the organized energy of someone who had spent 2 decades managing other people's assets and had decided she was good at it. She was good at it in the sense that the development's common areas were well maintained, the budget was solvent, and the newsletter came out on time every month. She was not good at reading recorded instruments because she had never needed to. In 20 years of commercial property management, she had relied on title companies and attorneys to handle the documents, and had focused her own attention on the operational layer, maintenance schedules, vendor contracts, resident communication. She had inherited the Meadow Lane framework from her predecessor, and had never asked whether the framework had a legal foundation. The marketing materials said Meadow Lane. The CC&Rs said Meadow Lane. The newsletter said Meadow Lane. The sign at the entrance said Meadow Lane. That had been enough. Dale was at the kitchen table on a Sunday evening in late April when his phone rang. He looked at the time, 6:45, and at the caller ID. His daughter Lena, the same Sunday evening call she made every week, from the same number she had called from since she set up her law practice 8 years ago. He answered, and they talked through the usual things: the herd, the pasture condition, the spring road maintenance he had completed the previous week. Then he mentioned the letter. It had arrived Thursday, certified, from the Ridgecrest Meadows HOA board under Sandra Vane's signature. 3 demands: that Dale repave the road's northern 400-foot section at his own expense to address surface deterioration the HOA characterized as a maintenance deficiency, that he replace 2 drainage culverts at the development's entrance at his own expense, and that he enter into a formal co-management agreement with the HOA, giving the board a role in road maintenance scheduling and decision-making. The letter cited the HOA's established road management rights over Meadow Lane. It did not cite a recorded instrument. Lena asked, "Did they attach anything? A recorded instrument? An easement amendment? Anything from the county?" He said no. He said the letter cited the HOA's CC&Rs and the development's approved site plan. She asked, "What instrument number is the road recorded under?" He said, RE-1948-004, September 1948, County Recorder's Office. She was quiet for a moment, the kind of quiet that a title attorney gets when she has just heard a recording number that tells her everything she needs to know about who owns what and how long they have owned it. He recognized the quality of it. He had heard the same quality of silence from engineers, reviewing a survey plat and understanding immediately what it meant. She said, "I'll drive up Saturday." He said the guest room was ready and the coffee would be on at 7. After they hung up, he went to the second bedroom and pulled the road folder from the filing cabinet. RE-1948-004, the original recorded instrument, the 1948 survey plat, his 2 objection letters, the HOA's responses, the county permit for the fence installation, the CC&R road maintenance fee provision, his logbook pages covering the road from his 2007 return to the current week. He set the folder on the kitchen table and left it there for her. Then he went to the porch and looked north at the road. The iron gate was visible at the road's far end in the evening light. The stone pillars, the iron panels, the Meadow Lane sign on the left post. The road ran from his porch to that gate, and from that gate to the county highway, and had run that way, under his family's ownership and maintenance, since his father had graded it in 1948, and set the granite monuments that were still in the ground on the monument line. The gate posts crossed by 5 feet. He had the instrument, he had the survey, he had the measurements, he had the 30-day removal clause on page 4. He went inside and opened his logbook to a new entry. He wrote the Sunday date and Lena's call, and one line. RE-1948-004, review, Saturday. Removal notice, pending review. Then he closed the logbook, checked the range weather for the week, and went to bed. The letter had arrived. The folder was on the table. Saturday was 6 days away. The land east of the county highway had been agricultural for as long as anyone in the county's planning office could remember. 2 family operations running cattle and hay on the lower slopes of the ridge, the fields running south from the Whitmore property line in the flat, open way of land that has been worked without interruption for generations. When the survey stakes appeared in the spring of 2006, Dale saw them from the ranch house porch on his morning walk, and noted them in his logbook with the entry he used for any activity near the road corridor. Date, observation, implications for RE-1948-004 to be assessed. He drove to the county highway that afternoon and looked at the staking pattern from the road's end. It was a subdivision layout. He drove back to the ranch and checked the county permit index online. No application yet. He wrote, Development Survey, Southern Parcel, Monitor Road Implications. The Ridgecrest Meadows development permit was filed with the county in early 2007. Dale pulled the application the week it appeared in the Public Notice Index and read it at the county planning office's public counter, standing the way he always stood when reading documents at a counter. Straight, unhurried, going through each page from top to bottom before turning to the next. He was looking for one thing specifically, what the application said about the access road. He found it on page 3 of the site plan narrative, in the section describing the development's vehicle access and internal circulation. The document described the project's primary access as via Meadow Lane, a private community road, entering from County Highway 7 at the development's northern boundary. It described Meadow Lane as maintained by the Ridgecrest Meadows Homeowners Association. It said nothing about RE-1948-004. It said nothing about the Whitmore family. It said nothing about the rite of passage that was the legal basis for any access the development's residents would ever have to the county highway. He drove from the planning office to the county recorder's office and checked the easement index for the southern parcel's address. RE-1948-004 was there, his family's instrument, recorded September 1948, exactly where it had always been. No new easement had been recorded. No amendment to RE-1948-004 had been filed. The developer's site plan described the road as a community road, maintained by an HOA that did not yet exist, on the basis of an access right that was a rite of passage only, without acknowledging the recorded instrument that defined what that right was and what it was not. He wrote to the developer the following week. The letter was 3 paragraphs, certified mail, the same structure he would use for every objection letter that followed. The road was private property under RE-1948-004, recorded with the county since 1948. The development's residents would hold a right of passage under the instrument's downstream parcel provisions, the right to travel the road's surface for access to the county highway, nothing more. No maintenance authority, no management authority, no right to modify the road's physical condition or install any structure within the easement corridor without his written authorization. He requested that the site plan's road description be corrected before the county issued a building permit. The developer's response came 2 weeks later on company letterhead, signed by a project manager named Hartfield. It said the road access was consistent with the development's approved access plan, and that Meadow Lane would be maintained by the HOA as a community amenity consistent with the project's design intent. It cited the county permit number. It did not address RE-1948-004. It did not address the right of passage distinction. It treated the objection as a misunderstanding about terminology, rather than a statement about recorded property rights. Dale checked the county records the week the response arrived. No new instrument. He filed the response behind his letter and wrote in his logbook, "Developer response, marketing language used, RE-1948-004, not addressed. County record unchanged. Continue monitoring." The county issued the building permit in April 2007. Dale had submitted a written objection to the permit office, citing the site plan's failure to reference the easement instrument and the description of the road as HOA maintained, when the instrument gave the HOA no maintenance authority. The permit office had acknowledged the objection and noted it in the file and issued the permit on the basis that the access arrangement was a civil matter between private parties. Dale noted this in his logbook, added the permit office response, and watched the construction proceed through 2008 and into 2009. The development opened in late 2009. The 180 units had sold steadily through the construction period. The marketing materials were polished and consistent. The road featured in every rendering as Meadow Lane, described as a private community lane providing a quiet, exclusive approach to Ridgecrest Meadows. The brochure's language was the language of resort marketing. Unhurried, scenic, a road that felt like an arrival rather than a commute. What the brochure did not say was that the road belonged to a 71-year-old rancher whose family had been maintaining it since 1948, and whose recorded instrument gave him the right to gate it, restrict access on it, and remove any unauthorized structure from it upon 30 days' notice. The HOA formed in 2010 and had its CC&Rs approved by the county the same year. Dale had obtained the CC&R document from the county's HOA registration filing and read the road maintenance provision on a Tuesday evening at the kitchen table. Section 7, Paragraph 3. The association shall maintain Meadow Lane, the development's primary access road, in a condition suitable for safe residential use, and shall assess each unit an annual road maintenance fee to fund this obligation. The annual fee was set at $150 per unit, 180 units, $27,000 per year, to be collected for the maintenance of a road the HOA did not own and had no recorded authority to maintain or assess fees on. He noted the fee structure in his logbook: $150 per unit, 180 units, $27,000 per year, collection beginning 2012 per the financial disclosure. He calculated the aggregate. If collection ran from 2012 forward, the total would accumulate at $27,000 per year. He wrote the calculation and left a blank beside it labeled, "Total to date, accumulating." He did not write to the HOA about the fee. The fee was a civil matter he could address when the time came. He continued monitoring. Sandra Vane became board president in 2022. She was the third president since the HOA's formation. Her 2 predecessors had each served 2-year terms and had each received the same letter from Dale in 2009 and 2021 respectively, and each had responded with the same marketing plan citation, and each had passed the situation to their successor without resolving it or documenting it as unresolved. Sandra had inherited the Meadow Lane operational framework, the fee structure, the maintenance schedule, the branding, and had never been told that a property owner on the road had objected in writing twice to the HOA's claimed authority. She had not asked whether he had, because the question had not occurred to her. The fence installation had happened under her predecessor's presidency in 2021, but Sandra had been on the board as a general member at the time and had voted in favor of the entrance improvement project. She remembered the vote as a routine aesthetic decision. The entrance looked dated. The stone pillars and iron gates would give the development a more polished appearance. The contractor's quote was within budget. She did not remember anyone at the meeting raising the question of whether the installation site was within the HOA's property boundary. She did not remember anyone pulling RE-1948-004 from the county recorder's office before the vote. She did not remember the letter the board had received from Dale the week before the installation began, because it had been read aloud at a board meeting she had missed and had been filed in the board correspondence folder without follow-up. The fence went in August 2021. 2 stone pillar posts, each set in a concrete footing poured within the road corridor, each positioned 5 feet inside the easement monument line. The iron gate panels hung between them at a combined span of 13 feet 10 inches, leaving the road's effective width at 14 feet between the gate panels and 18.8 feet between the outer faces of the pillar posts, both figures representing a significant reduction from the 24-foot recorded corridor. The Ridgecrest Meadows, Meadow Lane sign, was mounted on the left pillar's face in brushed aluminum lettering on a dark background, professional and permanent looking. The kind of sign that implies the name it displays has always been the road's name, and always will be. Dale had walked down the morning after the crew left and measured the posts against the monuments. He had done it with his survey rod and his field notebook, the same equipment and the same format his father had used on the same road in 1948. Left post, 5.1 feet inside the eastern monument line. Right post, 5.0 feet inside the western monument line. Effective corridor width between gate panels, 13 feet 10 inches. He wrote the measurements in his logbook on the same page as the installation observation. He wrote the date and the contractor's name from the truck he had seen during installation. Then he wrote, "Fence installation. No authorization requested. No authorization granted. Monitor." He had sent his second objection letter to the HOA board the week the installation was complete. Certified mail, the same structure as his 2009 letter. The easement corridor was his property, under RE-1948-004. The fence installation was within the corridor. No written authorization had been requested or granted. The installation violated the easement instrument's terms. He requested written acknowledgement that the HOA understood the road's ownership status and a timeline for removal of the unauthorized structure or presentation of a written authorization request for his review. He attached a copy of RE-1948-004 and the 1948 survey plat showing the monument line the posts had crossed. The HOA's response had come 3 weeks later under the then-president's signature. It cited the development's marketing materials and the CC&R's Meadow Lane language and said the board was confident the entrance improvement project was consistent with the HOA's established road management role. It did not address the easement instrument. It did not address the monument measurements Dale had included in his letter. It did not address the unauthorized obstruction removal clause on page 4 of RE-1948-004. Dale filed it behind his letter and wrote in his logbook, "Second HOA response, marketing language repeated, RE-1948-004, not addressed. Posts remain. Removal clause, available. Continue monitoring." The demand letter arrived in the spring of the current year, under Sandra Vane's signature and the co-signature of Miriam Osei, a board member who had joined 2 years earlier. The letter had 3 demands. Repave the road's northern 400-foot section at Dale's expense, addressing what the letter described as deteriorated surface conditions, creating a safety concern for residents. Replace the 2 drainage culverts at the development's entrance at Dale's expense, and execute a formal co-management agreement giving the HOA board a role in road maintenance scheduling, materials selection, and contractor decisions. The letter cited the HOA's established road management rights over Meadow Lane. It did not cite RE-1948-004. It did not cite any recorded instrument. It cited the CC and Rs and the development's approved access plan, and described the demands as consistent with the HOA's long-standing maintenance role. Miriam Osei had read the draft letter before it was sent. She was a former city planning analyst, the kind of professional who reads permit applications and site plans for a living, and understands the difference between a description of access and a recorded access right. She had been on the board for 2 years and had spent her first year reviewing the HOA's financial records and operational documentation. When the draft letter was circulated for board signatures, she had read it the evening she received it and written Sandra an email before she went to bed. She said she had a question before signing. Could Sandra send her the recorded easement instrument establishing the HOA's road management authority? She said she had checked the county recorder's index under the development's address and had found RE-1948-004 recorded under the Whitmore parcel name, which appeared to be the adjacent ranch. She said she wanted to confirm the HOA's authority was documented in a recorded instrument before signing a letter asserting it. Sandra called her the next morning and said the authority was documented in the CC and RS and the development's approved access plan, both of which were consistent with the marketing materials that had accompanied each unit's sale. She said the county had approved the development site plan with the Meadow Lane access designation, and that this constituted sufficient documentation of the access arrangement. She said the letter needed to go out by end of the week. Miriam asked one more question. Had anyone verified that the Whitmore family had agreed to the HOA's management role in a recorded instrument? Sandra said the marketing materials covered the access arrangement. Miriam signed the letter. She signed it because she was 2 years into a board role on a development where the access framework had been in place for 15 years, and she did not yet have enough confidence in her own reading of the situation to withhold her signature on the basis of a concern that Sandra had dismissed. But she kept a copy of her email. She kept a copy of Sandra's response, and she wrote a note to herself in the margin of her printed copy of the letter. No recorded instrument confirmed. Verify. The letter arrived at Dale's ranch house on a Thursday, delivered certified. He signed the receipt at the door, carried it to the kitchen table, and read it standing. Repave the northern section. Replace the culverts. Co-management agreement. He read the phrase, established road management rights over Meadow Lane, and set the letter flat on the table. He looked at it for a moment. 14 years since the HOA had started collecting fees on a road they did not own. 4 years since they had installed a fence across a corridor his father had built in 1948. And now, a formal demand letter asserting management rights that existed nowhere in the county's records. He called Lena that Sunday evening. He told her about the letter. She asked who they thought owned the road. He read her the easement instrument number, RE-1948-004, September 1948. She was quiet for a moment, in the specific way of a title attorney hearing a recording number that answers the relevant question immediately and completely. Then she said she would drive up Saturday. He said the guest room was ready. He went to the second bedroom after they hung up and pulled the road folder from the filing cabinet. He set it on the kitchen table beside the demand letter. Then he opened his logbook and wrote, "Demand letter received. 3 demands. No recorded instruments cited. Lena arriving Saturday. Cal Pruitt, pending." He looked at the folder on the table for a moment. Then he turned off the kitchen light and went to bed. The folder held the answer to every question the demand letter raised. It had held those answers since September 1948. Nobody on the HOA's board had ever looked for them. Saturday was 6 days away. Lena arrived Saturday at 8:40, earlier than usual. She had left the state capitol before first light, the drive completed in the quiet of an early morning when the highway was empty and the thinking time was uninterrupted. She had been thinking about RE-1948-004 since Sunday evening, not anxiously, methodically, the way she thought about every title question that came to her practice, from the recorded instrument outward, following the chain of authority in the direction the document pointed. The instrument pointed in one direction. It had always pointed in one direction. She wanted to sit with the full file and confirm that everything she expected to find was there and in the correct order. Dale met her at the door with coffee already poured. They sat at the kitchen table for 15 minutes. The herd, the spring pasture, the road maintenance he had completed 2 weeks earlier, grading the northern section after the wet season runoff. He mentioned the surface condition of the northern 400 feet was fine. He had graded it himself with the tractor blade, same as every spring, same as his father had done before him. The HOA's letter described it as deteriorated. He had walked it the day after the letter arrived, and had found nothing that a reasonable person would call deterioration. He had photographed it with his phone and noted the date in his logbook. Lena said that was useful. He said he had expected she would think so. She took her coffee to the second bedroom at 9 o'clock. The road folder was on the table where Dale had left it Thursday evening. The full contents, arranged in the order she would need them. Easement instrument at the front, current demand letter at the back. She sat down and read from the beginning. RE-1948-004 first. 5 pages, September 1948. The county recorder's stamp on the cover page showing the recording date and the instrument number in the sequence Dale had cited from memory on the phone Sunday evening. She read the meets and bounds description on pages 1 and 2, the corridor boundary described in bearings and distances against the survey monuments Dale's father had set in the summer of 1948, the 24-foot width confirmed at each cross-section station. She read the ownership and control provisions on page 3. Whitmore family holds full ownership of road surface, subsurface, and drainage infrastructure. Whitmore family holds sole authority for maintenance, timing, method, materials, and funding. 4 named downstream parcels hold right of passage only. She read the right of passage definition carefully. It was a single sentence, unambiguous. The right to travel the road's surface for purposes of ingress and egress to and from County Highway 7, without maintenance authority, management authority, or right to modify the road's physical condition. Then she read page 4. The unauthorized obstruction removal clause was in paragraph 7 of the operational terms section, and it was exactly what Dale had described on the phone, and exactly what she had been thinking about on the drive up. Any structure, installation, or obstruction placed within the easement corridor by a party other than the easement holder, without the written authorization of the easement holder, shall be considered an unauthorized obstruction. The easement holder shall have the right to remove any such obstruction upon 30 days written notice to the installing party, at the installing party's expense, without requirement of court order or administrative proceeding. She read it twice. She wrote it in her notepad word for word, not because she needed to transcribe it, but because writing legal language by hand was a way of making sure she had read every word and not skimmed a clause that mattered. Every word mattered. The clause was clean, specific, and self-executing. The notice period was 30 days. The removal right required no judicial process. The instrument was the authority. She read the 1948 survey plat next, the original file drawing, showing the corridor boundary, the monument positions, the cross-section widths at each station along the road's full length. The drawing was clear and dimensioned, and consistent with the meets and bounds description in the instrument. She found the station closest to the development's northern entrance, the point where the HOA's gate posts had been installed, and confirmed the corridor width at that station, 24.0 feet, monument to monument. She read Dale's 2009 objection letter to the developer, then the developer's response. She read the 2021 objection letter to the HOA board, sent before the installation began, before, she noted, not after, and the HOA's response citing the marketing materials. She read the fence installation building permit, obtained from the county permit office. The permit described the installation site as HOA common area. It did not reference RE-1948-004. It did not reference the Whitmore parcel. It had been issued on the basis of the HOA's self-description of the installation site's ownership. She read the HOA's CC and R road maintenance fee provision. Section 7, paragraph 3. $150 per unit, 180 units. Collection beginning 2012, per the annual financial disclosure Dale had obtained. She calculated the aggregate at the kitchen table on her notepad. $27,000 per year times 14 years of collection through the current year, $378,000. Assessed on a road the HOA had no authority to charge for, under an instrument that gave them no maintenance authority and no management rights, collected from 180 units, whose purchase included a rite of passage and nothing more. She read Sandra's current demand letter last. The three demands, the established road management rights language, the absence of any recorded instrument citation. She set it down and looked at her notes. 3 pages of organized observations, the removal clause transcribed on the first page, the $378,000 aggregate on the second, and on the third, a single sentence she had written as a summary of the file's legal posture. RE-1948-004 is unambiguous. Rite of passage only. Removal clause self-executing. 30-day notice sufficient. It was noon. She came back to the kitchen table and called Cal Pruitt. Cal had been in agricultural land and access rights law for 28 years, the first 8 as counsel for the county surveyor's office, a background that meant he read recorded easement instruments with the same fluency that title examiners read chains of title, understanding not just what the document said, but how it fit into the county's recording system and what its relationship was to every other instrument in the relevant parcel's file. Lena had worked alongside him in 2 access rights matters and had sent 4 clients to him in the years since. She trusted his reading of easement instruments, specifically because he had spent 8 years at the county surveyor's office, watching what happened when those instruments were misread or ignored. She gave him the summary in 9 minutes. He asked 5 questions: the instrument's recording date, the downstream parcel identification method in the instrument, whether any amendment to RE-1948-004 had been recorded since 1948, the HOA's annual fee amount and collection start date, and whether the gate posts were inside or outside the monument line. The answers were September 1948, parcel identification numbers with then current owner names, no amendment in the county's index as of Dale's most recent check, $150 per unit from 2012, and 5.1 feet inside on the east, and 5.0 feet inside on the west. Cal said he would pull the full development record from the county files and call back by the following Thursday. He asked Lena to scan and send the folder contents that afternoon. She said she would. He asked one additional question. Had Dale's logbook entries from 2021 noted the fence posts' positions against the monuments before and after installation? Lena looked at Dale across the table. Dale said yes. He had measured the posts the morning after the crew left and recorded the distances in the logbook. Cal said to include the relevant logbook pages in the scan. Lena said she would. She spent the afternoon at the kitchen table with the flatbed scanner, the easement instrument, the 1948 survey plat, both objection letters with their certified mail receipts, both HOA responses, the fence installation permit, the CC&R fee provision, and 5 logbook pages covering the 2021 installation observation and measurements. Lena organized the scan into a single PDF with a cover sheet she drafted in 15 minutes. Document list, recording numbers, key dates, the RE-1948-004 removal clause, transcribed at the top of the cover sheet, where Cal would see it before he opened anything else. Dale sat at the other end of the table, going through the week's pasture management notes, the same unhurried attention he brought to everything. They worked in the same room without needing to discuss it. Cal called the following Thursday at 2 in the afternoon. Dale and Lena were on speaker at the kitchen table, Lena's notepad open, Dale's logbook beside him. Cal had spent the week in 2 sets of records, the county recorder's deed and easement index, and the county planning department's permit archive. He reported his findings in 3 parts. The first part confirmed the ownership and authority question without ambiguity. RE-1948-004 was clean, unencumbered, and unmodified since its 1948 recording. No amendment had been filed, no partial release had been recorded, no instrument of any kind had been filed by the developer, the HOA, or any other party that modified the Whitmore family's ownership and control authority under the instrument. The 4 named downstream parcels held a right of passage, the right to use the road's surface for access to the county highway, That was the entirety of their recorded right. The HOA's residents, as successors to one of the 4 named downstream parcels, held the same right of passage and nothing more. No maintenance authority, no management authority, no construction authority, no right to install any structure within the corridor without the easement holder's written authorization. The second part addressed the fee collection. Cal had pulled the HOA's annual financial disclosures from the county's HOA registration filing, the same disclosures Dale had been reviewing since 2012. The road maintenance fee had been collected from 180 units at $150 per unit per year, beginning in 2012. 14 years of collection, $378,000 in aggregate. The fee was authorized in the CC&RS as a maintenance assessment for Meadow Lane. The CC&RS were an internal HOA governance document, with no effect on the recorded easement instrument. The HOA had no authority under RE-1948-004 to maintain the road, to assess fees for its maintenance, or to characterize it as an HOA asset. The $378,000 had been collected on a road the HOA did not own, for a maintenance obligation that was the Whitmore family's sole responsibility under the recorded instrument, from residents whose purchase had included a right of passage, and no representation from the recorded instrument that maintenance would be provided by anyone other than the easement holder. The third part was the removal clause, and Cal described it the way he described any provision that was both legally significant and operationally straightforward, precisely and without elaboration. The clause on page 4 of RE-1948-004 gave Dale the explicit recorded right to remove any unauthorized obstruction from the corridor upon 30 days written notice to the installing party, at the installing party's expense, without court order, without administrative filing, without any process beyond the notice itself. The fence installation was an unauthorized obstruction under the clause's definition, a structure placed within the corridor by a party other than the easement holder without written authorization. Dale had written to the HOA in 2021 before the installation and had received a response that did not request authorization. No written authorization had been granted. The obstruction was unauthorized. The removal right was available. Cal said he had called Lena separately earlier that week to discuss this provision before the group call, because he wanted to be certain they were reading the clause the same way. Lena said they were. Cal said his recommendation was to engage Ellis Roark for a current survey before the removal notice was sent, to have the encroachment documented by a licensed professional with a sealed report before any physical action was taken. Dale asked why the survey was necessary if the monument measurements he had taken in 2021 were already in the logbook. Cal said the logbook measurements were valuable as owner-recorded baseline data and would be included in any proceeding, but that a licensed surveyor's sealed report established the encroachment in a form that was uncontestable in any forum, county, state, or court. He said Ellis Roark was the most thorough field surveyor he had worked with in 20 years, and that his reports had been accepted in every relevant proceeding without challenge. Dale said to engage him. Cal said he would call Ellis Monday. Miriam Osei had pulled the county easement index herself the same week Lena arrived, the Tuesday after she had signed the letter, when her own note to verify had been sitting on her desk for 4 days, and she had decided to check rather than continue sitting with the uncertainty. She had gone to the county recorder's public database from her home office computer, typed the Whitmore parcel address into the search field, and found RE-1948-004 in the easement index with its September 1948 recording date and the Whitmore name as the instrument holder. She had clicked through to the instrument summary, the public-facing record showing the instrument number, recording date, parties, and brief description. The description read, "Private road easement, 24-foot corridor, 4 named downstream beneficiaries, right of passage only. Right of passage only." She had looked at those 3 words for a long time. Then she had written Sandra an email. She said she had checked the county easement index and found RE-1948-004 recorded under the Whitmore parcel name, and that the instrument's description indicated the downstream parcels, which would include the Ridgecrest Meadows parcel, held a right of passage only. She asked Sandra to confirm that the HOA had a recorded instrument establishing its maintenance and management authority beyond the rite of passage, and to send her the instrument number if one existed. She sent the email at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday and saved a copy to her personal drive. Sandra did not reply. Miriam waited 4 days. No response. She wrote a follow-up, a single sentence. "Can you confirm whether a recorded management authority instrument exists?" She sent it Friday morning. Sandra did not reply to that one either. Miriam printed both emails, the original with the sent timestamp and the rite of passage only quotation, and the follow-up with its timestamp and the absence of any response, and put them in a folder she labeled RE-1948-004, verification pending. She kept the folder on her desk. She had not yet told anyone outside her own household what she had found. She was waiting to see what Sandra would do with the demand letter's response. But she had the folder. She had the timestamps. She had the rite of passage only notation in the county's own public database. And she had been asking the right questions since before the letter went out, in writing, in a form that had a timestamp and a record. Ellis Rourke arrived Monday morning at 7:30. His field truck parked at the road's northern entrance, the county highway end, by the time Dale walked down from the ranch house. He was a compact, deliberate man who set up his equipment before exchanging more than a greeting, the field notebook already open on the truck's tailgate, the total station mounted on its tripod, and oriented toward the first monument station before Dale had finished his coffee. He had been doing corridor surveys for 20 years, and he worked the way experienced field surveyors work, systematically, without hurrying, with the specific patience of someone who knows that the quality of a sealed report is determined entirely by the quality of the field measurements, and that field measurements cannot be recovered after the fact if they are taken carelessly. He asked Dale one question before beginning. Were the original 1948 survey monuments still in place along the full corridor length? Dale said yes. He said he had confirmed every monument on his return to the ranch in 2007, and had rewalked the full corridor in 2021 after the fence installation to confirm the monuments nearest the gateposts were undisturbed. All monuments present and in original position. Ellis wrote that in his field notebook and picked up the prism pole. He worked a northern 600 feet of corridor in a systematic progression from the county highway end south toward the ranch house, setting up the total station at each survey station and shooting angles and distances to the nearest monuments on both sides of the corridor. The first 4 stations were in the open section of road north of the gateposts, the section where the corridor was undisturbed and the monument line was unobstructed. At each of these stations, Ellis measured the corridor width from monument to monument, recorded the bearing of the corridor center line, and noted the road surface condition. The widths at all 4 northern stations were consistent: 23.9 feet, 24.0 feet, 24.1 feet, 23.9 feet. Measurement variation within the tolerance of the instrument and the monument's physical dimensions, all consistent with the 1948 instrument's recorded 24-foot width. At Station 5, he reached the gateposts. He set up the total station on the corridor center line, shot the eastern monument, then shot the eastern gatepost. The distance from the monument to the post's outer face was 5.1 feet. The post was 5.1 feet inside the monument line, sitting on the road corridor's surface within the recorded easement boundary. He shot the western monument and the western post. Distance from monument to post outer face, 5.0 feet. He measured the clear span between the inner faces of the gate panels, 13 feet 10 inches. He measured the span between the outer faces of the pillar posts, 18 feet 10 inches. He photographed Station 5 from 4 directions, looking north along the corridor toward the county highway, looking south toward the ranch house, and from each side showing the post's relationship to the nearest monument. He took 12 photographs at Station 5 before moving to Station 6. He worked 5 more stations south of the gateposts, measuring the corridor width at each one to establish the road's unobstructed condition on the ranch side of the installation. All 5 stations showed corridor widths consistent with the 1948 recorded dimension, 23.8 to 24.1 feet, within measurement tolerance, the monument line intact and undisturbed by any other installation or obstruction. He came back Tuesday morning for one additional set of measurements at Stations 4, 5, and 6. He wanted to reshoot the critical stations on a second day to confirm the readings against any instrument setup variation from Monday. The reshoot confirmed Monday's measurements at every station within 0.05 feet. He wrote the confirmation readings in his field notebook on the same pages as Monday's entries, with Tuesday's date beside each reshot figure. He also measured the gate post's footings, the concrete pads poured to anchor each pillar. The eastern footing's outer edge was 4.7 feet inside the monument line, meaning the footing extended from 4.7 feet to approximately 6.1 feet inside the easement boundary, occupying 1.4 feet of the easement corridor's subsurface at its shallowest point. The western footing was similar, outer edge 4.6 feet inside the monument line, extending to approximately 6.0 feet inside the boundary. Ellis noted both footing measurements and added a notation in his field book. Footing encroachment into easement subsurface confirmed, both sides. He photographed the footing edges where they were visible above grade. He told Dale before he left Tuesday afternoon that he would have a draft report to Cal by the following Wednesday and a sealed final by Friday. Dale said that was fine. Dale asked if Ellis wanted a copy of the 1948 survey plat for reference in preparing the report. Ellis said he had already pulled the plat from the county surveyor's archive Monday morning before driving out. He always pulled the original instrument before field work so that his measurements could be compared directly against the recorded dimensions in the report. Dale said his father had filed the plat with the county surveyor's office in September 1948. Ellis said it was there, and it was legible, and the monument descriptions matched what he had found in the field. Cal received the draft Wednesday afternoon, read it Thursday morning, and called Ellis with two questions, both about the footing encroachment measurements and how Ellis intended to characterize them under the county's easement protection ordinance. Ellis answered both without hesitation, citing the ordinance's definition of corridor encroachment and the footing measurement's relationship to the easement boundary. Cal said the report was solid. Ellis said the sealed final would be in Cal's hands Friday morning. The sealed report arrived Friday at 9. 17 pages, Ellis Roark's State Land Surveyor certification number and professional seal on the cover page, his signature on the certification page at the back. Cal read it in full before he called anyone. The report's findings were organized in 4 sections. Section 1 described the survey methodology and the monument condition. All 1948 monuments confirmed present and in original position, consistent with Dale's 2007 rewalk documentation and his 2021 logbook measurements. Section 2 presented the corridor width measurements at all 12 stations, with a 24.0-foot recorded dimension as the baseline. Stations 1 through 4 and 7 through 12, all within measurement tolerance of 24.0 feet. Station 5, showing an effective functional width of 13 feet 10 inches between gate panels and 18 feet 10 inches between pillar post outer faces, compared to the 24.0-foot recorded corridor. Section 3 was the encroachment analysis. The eastern gate post sat 5.1 feet inside the recorded easement boundary. The western gate post sat 5.0 feet inside the recorded easement boundary. The post's concrete footings extended further into the easement subsurface, with outer footing edges 4.7 and 4.6 feet inside the monument line respectively. The installation had reduced the road's functional width by 10 feet 2 inches, a 42.4% reduction from the recorded 24-foot corridor. Ellis had included a plan view drawing of Station 5, showing the monument line, the post positions, the footing extent, and the corridor width measurements annotated on the same diagram. The drawing made the encroachment legible to anyone who looked at it, regardless of their familiarity with survey notation. Section 4 was the regulatory finding. The gatepost installation constituted an unauthorized physical alteration of a recorded easement corridor under 2 independent authorities. The easement instrument RE-1948-004's unauthorized obstruction definition on page 4, and the county's easement protection ordinance section 14.7, which defined any reduction of a recorded corridor width by more than 15% as a prohibited encroachment requiring easement holder authorization. The 42.4% reduction exceeded the ordinance's threshold by a factor of nearly 3. Ellis stated the finding plainly and cited both authorities without editorial comment. The report was not an advocacy document. It was a factual record of what existed in the field, compared against what the recorded instrument said should exist, with the applicable authorities identifying the discrepancy as a violation. Cal called Lena that Friday afternoon. He read the key figures from the report: 5.1 feet and 5.0 feet encroachment, 42.4% corridor width reduction, footing subsurface encroachment confirmed, dual violation finding under instrument and ordinance, and said the report was as clean a survey encroachment documentation as he had seen in 20 years of easement work. Lena said she had expected that from what Dale's 2021 logbook measurements had already shown. Cal said the logbook measurements were accurate and would be cited in the complaint as owner-recorded baseline data predating the professional survey. He said the certified response letter was drafted and ready for review. The draft arrived at Dale's email at 4:30 Friday afternoon. He printed it and read it at the kitchen table, the same deliberate reading he gave every document, beginning to end, once for comprehension, once for accuracy. 4 paragraphs, plain language. The first paragraph stated the ownership position. The road was Dale's private property, an easement corridor under RE-1948-004, a recorded instrument filed with the county in September 1948, the terms of which gave the Whitmore family sole ownership and maintenance authority, and gave the HOA's residents a right of passage only. 3 recorded authorities were named: the deed, the easement instrument, and the 1948 survey plat filed with the county surveyor's office. All 3 were available for public review. The second paragraph refused the demand in full. The repaving demand, the culvert replacement demand, and the co-management agreement demand were each refused on the same basis. The demands required Dale to alter the management of his private easement corridor for the HOA's benefit, or to share control of that corridor with a party that held no management authority under the recorded instrument. The refusal was stated in 2 sentences. The paragraph said no, and it said why. The third paragraph addressed the fence installation directly. The gate posts, gate panels, and pillar-mounted sign installed by the HOA in August 2021 were unauthorized obstructions within the RE-1948-004 easement corridor under the instrument's page 4 removal clause. The posts sat 5.1 feet and 5.0 feet inside the recorded monument line on the east and west sides respectively, as confirmed by a licensed land surveyor's sealed report. The installation had reduced the corridor's functional width by 42.4% from the recorded 24-foot dimension. Dale reserved all rights under the instrument's removal clause regarding the continued presence of the unauthorized obstructions. The fourth paragraph was a single sentence. No further demands would be considered without presentation of a recorded instrument establishing the HOA's claimed management authority over RE-1948-004. 4 attachments. The easement instrument RE-1948-004, the 1948 survey plat, Dale's 2009 and 2021 objection letters with their certified mail receipts, and Cal's 2-page county records summary, his name and firm at the top, the search methodology described, and the finding stated plainly. No instrument establishing HOA maintenance or management authority over the RE-1948-004 easement corridor exists in the county recorder's deed and easement index, the county planning department's permit records, or any other county or state filing as of the date of this summary. Lena called Dale at 6 to go through the draft. She asked if he had questions on any paragraph. He said the third paragraph's reserved language was correct, the same language, he noted, as the equivalent paragraph in the water rights and lake access cases she had told him about from her practice. She said Cal had used it deliberately. It disclosed the existence of the removal right without specifying when or whether it would be exercised, leaving every option open while establishing that Dale was aware of the right and had not waived it. Dale said he understood. He said the letter was accurate and he would sign it. He printed the final version Saturday morning, signed it at the kitchen table at 7, drove to the County Road Post Office, and mailed it certified at 7:25. He kept the receipt, drove back to the ranch, and sat at the kitchen table with the logbook open. He wrote the Saturday date. He wrote, "Certified response mailed 7:25 a.m., 4 attachments. Demand refused in full. Unauthorized obstructions noted. Rights reserved. No recorded management authority cited by HOA. County record, unchanged." He paused, looked out the kitchen window at the road running north toward the gateposts visible at the road's far end, then wrote the last line of the entry. Awaiting Sandra Vane's decision. Removal notice, pending. He closed the logbook and made breakfast. The posts were still in the ground. They had been in the ground for 4 years. The removal clause had been in the instrument for 76. He had time. What he did not have was any reason to believe that Sandra Vane, having received his letter, would make the correct decision quickly. He ate breakfast and waited to find out. Sandra received the certified envelope Monday afternoon, signed the receipt at her front door, and carried it to the kitchen table. She opened it and removed the letter and the 4 attachments. She read the first paragraph, RE-1948-004, September 1948, right of passage only, sole maintenance authority vested in the Whitmore family, and set the letter down. She looked at the attachments without opening them. Then she called the HOA's general counsel. The attorney who took her call listened for 4 minutes and told her the recorded easement question was outside his firm's practice area. He handled association governance, collections, and contractor disputes. A dispute over a recorded easement instrument from 1948 required a property access specialist. He gave her 2 referrals. She wrote both names down this time. She called the first name Tuesday morning. His paralegal said he could review the file and call back by Thursday. Sandra sent the letter and the 4 attachments by email that afternoon. She did not send Ellis Rourke's sealed survey report because she did not know it existed. She did not send Dale's logbook pages because she did not know Cal had them. The attorney called back Thursday at 11 in the morning. He had spent 2 days reviewing the 4 documents and had pulled the relevant county records independently. The easement index, the planning permit archive, the HOA's annual financial disclosures. His assessment was delivered in the same measured, neutral register that property access attorneys use when the record is unambiguous and the client is not going to like what it says. RE-1948-004 was clear. The instrument was unmodified since its 1948 recording. No amendment, no partial release, no supplemental agreement of any kind in the county's files. The Whitmore family held full ownership and sole maintenance authority over the road corridor. The HOA's residents, as successors to one of the 4 named downstream parcels, held a right of passage. That was the entirety of their recorded right. No maintenance authority, no management authority, no right to install any structure within the corridor without the easement holder's written authorization. The fence installation violated the instrument's terms on 2 independent bases. The unauthorized obstruction clause on page 4 of RE-1948-004, and the county's easement protection ordinance, which defined any corridor width reduction exceeding 15% as a prohibited encroachment. The posts reduced the corridor by 42.4%. The violation was not ambiguous or arguable. It was documented in the instrument, documented in the ordinance, and he had noticed the letter's reference to a licensed land surveyor's sealed report, documented by a professional field measurement that would be uncontestable in any proceeding. The road maintenance fee had no legal basis. The CC&Rs were an internal governance document with no effect on the recorded easement instrument. The HOA had assessed $378,000 in fees for the maintenance of a road the instrument gave them no authority to maintain or charge for. He recommended immediate settlement outreach. He said the HOA's exposure was significant. Unauthorized structure on private property, corridor width violation under the county ordinance, 14 years of fees collected without authority, and that the exposure compounded with every week of continued operation. He recommended the board contact the easement holder's attorney and initiate a settlement conversation before the matter was filed as a formal complaint. He did not recommend asserting prescriptive management rights. Sandra had asked before he gave his recommendation the same way Cora and Diane had asked about adverse possession and prescriptive easement in their respective situations, as a search for an alternate theory that might survive where the primary position had failed. He said prescriptive rights required open use over the owner's objection, continuous for the statutory period. Dale Whitmore had sent a written objection to the developer in 2009 and a written objection to the HOA board in 2021, both certified, both in the county's correspondence record, both stating plainly that the road was private property and that no management authority had been granted. The objection record defeated the prescriptive theory before it could be asserted. He said he could not recommend a legal position that the county record refuted on its face. Sandra thanked him. She told him she would be in touch. She hung up and sat at the kitchen table, looking at the road through the kitchen window. The road she had been managing for 3 years, that she had described in newsletters as Meadow Lane, that the development's entrance sign named in brushed aluminum lettering on a dark background. She thought about what retreat meant, the $378,000 in fees that would require accounting for, the gate posts that would have to come out, the sign that would have to come down, the 180 units whose purchase had included a representation about road access that was now revealed as legally unfounded. She did not call the attorney back. She called an emergency board meeting Thursday evening. The common room had 3 chairs occupied: Sandra, Miriam, and a third board member named Garrett, who had joined 8 months earlier and had not reviewed the underlying easement documents. Sandra had printed one document for the table, the HOA's road maintenance fee revenue summary, 14 years of collection at $27,000 per year, the $378,000 aggregate at the bottom in bold. She had not printed the attorney's assessment. She had not printed RE-1948-004. She had not printed Dale's certified response letter. She presented her position in 11 minutes. 14 years of road maintenance operations, fee collection, contractor management, surface maintenance, the entrance improvement project that installed the gate system. The development's identity was built on Meadow Lane as a branded community feature. The entrance sign had been there for 4 years. Retreat, acknowledging the easement instrument and initiating removal of the gate system, would require the HOA to account for $378,000 in fees it had collected without recorded authority, and would remove the development's primary branded feature. She said retreat was not viable. She said the HOA had 14 years of open, continuous road maintenance activity that established prescriptive management rights, and that asserting those rights formally in a second letter would put Dale Whitmore in the position of having to litigate rather than simply receiving an unfavorable legal opinion. She did not tell the board what the attorney had said about the prescriptive rights theory. She did not tell them he had recommended immediate settlement. She did not tell them about the objection letters he had cited as defeating the theory. She said she had consulted an attorney who had confirmed the HOA had a basis to assert prescriptive management rights. That was not what the attorney had said. It was the version that led to the conclusion she had already reached before she called the meeting. Garrett voted yes. He had been on the board for 8 months and had not asked any questions during Sandra's presentation. Miriam voted no. She said it without elaboration when the vote was called. Then she asked for the meeting minutes. The minute taker opened her laptop. Miriam asked to review the draft before the meeting closed. She read the vote record, confirmed her no vote was recorded, and dictated her dissent. She said she had voted no because before signing the first demand letter, she had emailed Sandra asking for a recorded instrument establishing the HOA's management authority over the RE-1948-004 easement corridor, and had received a response citing the marketing materials rather than a recorded instrument, and had sent a follow-up email asking specifically whether a recorded management authority instrument existed, and that email had received no reply. She said she was recording her dissent because the board was now voting to assert prescriptive management rights, a theory that required open use over the owner's objection, without the board having reviewed whether the easement holder had objected in writing at any point during the claimed period. She said she had found RE-1948-004 in the county easement index under the Whitmore parcel name, and that the instrument's description stated right of passage only, and that the board should have read that instrument before sending any letter asserting rights that the instrument did not grant. She asked the minute taker to read it back. The minute taker read it back. Miriam confirmed it was accurate and asked for a timestamp. The minute taker added it. Miriam photographed the screen. Then she looked at Sandra directly and asked, "Did you receive my 2 emails asking for the recorded easement instrument?" Sandra said she had responded to the first one. Miriam asked about the follow-up. Sandra said the follow-up had not required a response because the first response had addressed the question. Miriam wrote the exchange in the margin of her meeting agenda copy, dated it, and put it in her bag beside the folder she had been keeping since the Tuesday she had found RE-1948-004 in the county's public database. The second letter went out Friday on HOA letterhead, the property access attorney's firm name in the footer, though he had not drafted it and had not been informed it was being sent. Sandra had drafted it herself, 2 pages. The first asserted 14 years of open, continuous road maintenance activity as the basis for prescriptive management rights equivalent to a recorded easement. The second demanded that Dale withdraw his objection to the HOA's road management role, comply with the repaving and culvert replacement demands, and execute the co-management agreement within 30 days, or face legal action to establish the prescriptive rights in court. The letter did not mention Dale's 2009 and 2021 objection letters. It did not address RE-1948-004's management authority provisions. It did not address the 42.4% corridor width reduction or the county ordinance violation. It asserted the prescriptive theory and stated the deadline and left everything else unaddressed, as though the 4 attachments in Dale's certified response had not arrived in an envelope Sandra had signed for on Monday. Dale received it Saturday morning. He drove to the mailbox, signed the receipt, and stood at the mailbox to read both pages. He read the prescriptive management rights language with the attention of someone who knew that the theory required continuous use over the owner's objection, and who had 2 certified objection letters establishing that objection in the county's correspondence records since 2009. The theory required those letters not to exist. They existed. They were in the filing cabinet in the second bedroom, behind the tab labeled Road, Easement, same as they had always been. He folded the letter and drove back to the ranch house. He sat at the kitchen table and called Lena. She answered on the second ring. He said, "Second letter, prescriptive management rights, 30-day compliance demand." Lena said, "Now we file, and we send the removal notice." He said, "I know." She said she would call Cal first thing Monday. She said the complaint would be drafted by end of week, and the 30-day removal notice should go out simultaneously. The clock needed to start running. He said he understood. She said do nothing in the meantime. No response to the letter, no communication with Sandra or anyone on the board. He said he had not planned to respond. After they hung up, he opened his logbook to a new page. He wrote the Saturday date. He wrote, "Second letter received. Prescriptive management rights asserted. Demand refused. 2 certified objection letters on record. 2009, 2021. Theory defeated by existing record." He paused. Then he wrote, "Removal notice. 30-day clock starts Monday." He closed the logbook and looked north through the kitchen window at the road running toward the gate. The iron panels, the stone pillars, the Meadow Lane sign in brushed aluminum on the left post. The monument line his father had set in 1948, running straight and unchanged beneath the post foundations, 5 feet inside the eastern post and 5 feet inside the western, the same as it had been since the morning after the crew left and he had measured it with his survey rod. The removal clause had been sitting on page 4 of RE-1948-004 for 76 years. Monday was 2 days away. Cal filed at 9:05 Monday morning. 39 pages, 3 tracks, 8 exhibits, organized with the structural precision of someone who had spent 28 years building property rights cases, from the recorded instrument outward, and who understood that the strength of a complaint was not in its length, but in the completeness of its documentary foundation. Every assertion traced to an exhibit. Every exhibit was a document that had been sitting in a county file since 1948, or a professional report sealed the previous week. The complaint was the record made legible. Track 1 occupied the first 14 pages. Unauthorized fence installation on Dale's easement corridor. 2 gate posts set in concrete footings within the RE-1948-004 corridor boundary. Gate panels reducing the road's functional width by 42.4%, and a development sign mounted on the left pillar, all installed in August 2021 without written authorization, without a permit referencing the easement instrument, and in direct violation of the unauthorized obstruction clause on page 4 of RE-1948-004 and the county's Easement Protection Ordinance, Section 14.7. Cal constructed the track in 2 layers: the ownership layer, establishing through the deed, the instrument, and the 1948 survey plat that the corridor was Whitmore property, subject solely to the downstream parcel's right of passage, and the violation layer, establishing through Ellis Roark's sealed report and Dale's 2021 logbook measurements that the installation was physically inside the monument line and legally outside any authorization the HOA possessed. The road maintenance fee ran alongside the fence installation as a parallel unauthorized act, $150 per unit per year from 180 units beginning 2012, 14 years of collection, $378,000 in aggregate. Assessed for the maintenance of an easement corridor, the HOA's CC&Rs had no power to convert into an HOA asset. No recorded instrument gave the HOA maintenance authority. No instrument gave it management authority. No instrument gave it fee assessment authority over a road owned by the Whitmore family since 1948. Track 2 ran from page 15 to page 26. The 2 demand letters, the spring demand and the second letter sent the previous week, constituted unlawful interference with a recorded private easement and the easement holder's property rights. Cal was precise about the interference dimension. The demands did not merely ask Dale to do things on his road. They asked him to perform maintenance on his private property at his own expense for the HOA's operational benefit, to cede partial control of his easement corridor's management to a party that held no management authority under the recorded instrument, and to acknowledge claimed rights that existed in no recorded document. The second letter's 30-day compliance demand added a coercive element that the first letter had not. It specified legal action as the consequence of non-compliance, using the threat of litigation to pressure an easement holder into surrendering rights the instrument gave him clearly and unambiguously. Cal named Sandra Vane personally on track 2 because both letters bore her signature, and the escalation from demand to prescriptive rights assertion was a documented pattern in the certified mail record. Track 3 was 11 pages. The prescriptive management rights theory in the second letter failed at its foundation, and Cal documented the failure with the same methodical precision he had brought to the rest of the complaint. Prescriptive rights required open use over the owner's objection, continuous for the statutory period. Dale had written to the developer in 2009, before the development opened, before the HOA formed, before the first maintenance fee was collected, stating that the road was private property and that no management authority had been granted. He had written to the HOA board in 2021, before the fence installation was complete, stating the same position in the same plain language. Both letters were certified. Both were in the county's correspondence record. Both established owner objection at the beginning and the midpoint of the claimed 14-year period. The prescriptive theory required those letters not to exist. They were Exhibits E and F in the complaint. The theory failed on documents the HOA had in its own files. Exhibit H was the last exhibit. Cal had positioned it there deliberately. RE-1948-004, page 4, the unauthorized obstruction removal clause, reproduced at full size. Any structure, installation, or obstruction placed within the easement corridor by a party other than the easement holder without the written authorization of the easement holder shall be considered an unauthorized obstruction. The easement holder shall have the right to remove any such obstruction upon 30 days written notice to the installing party, at the installing party's expense, without requirement of court order or administrative proceeding. He had not annotated it. He had reproduced the clause and let it read for itself. Simultaneously with the filing, Cal sent the formal 30-day removal notice to the HOA by certified mail, a separate document, 2 pages, addressed to the HOA board at its registered address. The notice identified the installation by date, description, and physical location within the corridor. It cited the unauthorized obstruction clause and stated Dale's removal right in the instrument's own language. It gave the HOA 30 days from the notice's delivery date to remove both gate posts, the gate panels, the sign, and the concrete footings from the easement corridor at the HOA's own expense. It stated that, if the HOA failed to complete removal within 30 days, Dale would exercise the removal right himself using a licensed contractor, with all contractor costs, survey fees, and associated expenses added to the damages claim in the pending complaint. The notice was factual, specific, and without rhetorical elevation. It described a right, identified an obstruction, and stated a deadline. Lena drove up Tuesday. She arrived at 9:15, and they walked the road's northern section together before the morning was fully warm, Dale leading from the ranch house end, moving at the unhurried pace of a man who had walked this road for 60 years and had no reason to rush any part of it. He carried his survey rod out of habit rather than necessity. The measurements were already in the logbook and in Ellis's sealed report, but walking the road with the instrument in hand was a way of being present to what he knew, rather than simply knowing it at a desk. They stopped at the gate posts. Lena stood at the monument line on the east side, a cut granite stone, 4 inches square, set flush with the grade, its surface worn smooth by 76 years of weather, but its position unchanged. She looked from the monument to the post's outer face, 5 feet, 1 inch. She walked to the west monument and looked from it to the western post, 5 feet, 0 inches. She looked at the HOA's sign on the left pillar, Ridgecrest Meadows, Meadow Lane, the brushed aluminum letters clean in the morning light, permanent looking. Dale looked at the same sign. He looked at the eastern monument, flush with the grade, set by his father's hands in the summer of 1948. The monument had no lettering on it. It was a plain cut stone, carrying no name or number, its identity established entirely by its position in the recorded survey plat filed that September. Its position said RE-1948-004. Its position said it had been there since the road was built. Its position said everything the sign on the pillar 5 feet beyond it was trying to say with a different name, about a different history that the recorded instrument did not support. They walked back to the ranch house. Lena said the removal notice was clean and the complaint was solid. Dale said he knew. She said she would be reachable through the end of the notice period and to call immediately if Sandra or the board made contact. He said he would. The 30 days ran. Dale checked his logbook each morning. Date, road condition observation, removal notice day count in the right margin. Day 5, day 10, day 15. The gate posts were in the ground. The road was 14 feet wide at the gate. The monument was still 5 feet east of the eastern post, unchanged. Day 22. The HOA's outside property access attorney, the one Sandra had not told about the second letter, called Cal's office after finally receiving a copy of the complaint from the HOA's registered agent. He said he had not drafted the second letter and had not been consulted before it was sent. Cal said he understood. The attorney said he would be recommending immediate settlement to his client. Cal said the removal notice's 30-day period was running and that the settlement conversation needed to happen before day 30 if the HOA wanted to retain any control over the removal process. Day 28. Sandra called Cal's office at 2 in the afternoon and asked for a 2-week extension on the removal notice. Cal said he would consult his client and call back within the hour. He called Dale. He said Sandra was asking for 14 additional days. Dale said no. Cal said, "That's what I expected." He called Sandra back within 30 minutes, no extension. Day 30 stood. Day 30 was a Thursday. Dale arrived at the gate at 7 a.m. Ellis Roark was already there, his field truck parked on the county highway shoulder, with the total station set up on its tripod. The licensed contractor, a general contractor from the county seat, whom Cal had engaged 2 weeks earlier in anticipation of the HOA's non-removal, had his crew of 3 on site with a concrete saw, a skid steer with a fork attachment, and a flatbed trailer. Lena stood at the ranch house end of the road with her phone and her notepad. Frank Daly from the county road inspector's office was parked on the highway shoulder 50 feet from Ellis's truck. Cal had called him the previous week as a professional courtesy. the same kind of advance notification that had served the Emmett Crane situation well. A field inspector on site with context, rather than arriving in response to a complaint without it. Frank had been a county road inspector for 24 years, and a former colleague of Dale's from the County Surveyors Committee in the 1990s. He had pulled RE-1948-004 the evening Cal called, and had read the removal clause on page 4, and had told Cal he would be there. He had a copy of the clause in his field folder, and he had no intention of intervening in a lawful exercise of a recorded property right. The contractor began at 7:15. The concrete saw cut the footing around the eastern post first, a precise cut tracing the footing's perimeter, through the concrete pad to the grade below. The skid steer's forks lifted the post and footing together from the cut, the concrete breaking cleanly at the saw line. The eastern post came out in one piece at 8:05, footing attached, the excavation showing the clean edge of the cut and the undisturbed road substrate beneath. The contractor's crew filled the excavation with compacted gravel from the truck bed and leveled the surface. Ellis shot the eastern monument from the total station and noted the clear line of sight, no obstruction, monument to monument, open corridor. The western post took slightly longer. The footing had been poured against a subsurface rock that required additional saw work. It came out at 9:20. The gate panels had been removed between the two posts, unbolted from their hinges, and stacked on the flatbed. The sign came down at 9:35, unbolted from the left pillar's face, the mounting hardware removed, the brushed aluminum lettering carried to the flatbed in two pieces. By 11:05, the flatbed was loaded, both posts with footings, both gate panels, the sign in two pieces, the hardware in a contractor's bucket. The road surface at the removal site had been filled, compacted, and graded level. Ellis surveyed the corridor at Station 5, the same station he had measured in his sealed report, the same position where the posts had stood for 4 years. He shot both monuments, measured the clear span between them, and read the distance from his instrument display, 23.9 feet. He wrote it in his field notebook and confirmed it against the 1948 recorded dimension, within 2 inches, measurement tolerance, monument line intact and unobstructed. Dale stood at the corridor's center line and looked north. Open road, county highway visible at the end, the same view that had existed from this position from 1948 until August 2021. He took one photograph with his phone, looking north along the restored corridor, both monument lines visible as slight grade changes on each side, the county highway at the frame's top edge. Then he walked back to the ranch house and opened his logbook at the kitchen table. He wrote, "Obstruction removed, 11:14 a.m. Corridor restored to recorded width, 23.9 feet. RE-1948-004 operational." Sandra called the County Emergency Services line at noon. The complaint was received by the County Road Inspector's dispatch and routed to Frank Daly, who was still parked on the highway shoulder, completing his field notation. He confirmed that the removal had been executed under the RE-1948-004 Easement Instruments page 4 removal clause, that the easement holder had provided 30 days written notice to the installing party as required, that a licensed land surveyor had documented the post positions before removal and the corridor dimensions after, and that no county ordinance or regulation had been violated. He said the removal was a lawful exercise of a recorded property right. He closed the complaint in 14 minutes and filed his field notation at 12:22. Authorized removal confirmed. RE-1948-004 removal clause exercised. Corridor restored to recorded dimension per surveyor field measurement. No regulatory action applicable. The emergency board session convened at 5 p.m. in the common room. Sandra arrived first, her phone in both hands. Garrett arrived second. Miriam arrived at 4:58, carrying a manila folder. She sat down, opened the folder, and placed 2 documents on the table. The first was Dale's 2021 objection letter, the one Sandra's predecessor had filed in the board correspondence folder without follow-up, the one Sandra had read during the week of the second letter and had not sent to the attorney and had not brought to the board meeting. The certified mail receipt was still attached to the upper corner. 3 paragraphs. Private property. No authorization granted. Unauthorized obstruction clause cited on page 4 of RE-1948-004. The second document was Miriam's email to Sandra, printed on a single page. The Tuesday evening message asking for the recorded management authority instrument, the sent timestamp visible. The quotation of rite of passage only from the county's public database in the body of the email. Below it, her follow-up, time-stamped 4 days later. Below that, blank space where a reply would have appeared. No reply existed. She set both documents side by side in the center of the table and folded her hands. She did not say anything. The gate posts were on a flatbed in a county contractor's yard. The Meadow Lane sign was in 2 pieces on the same flatbed. The road was 23.9 feet wide for the first time in 4 years, and the monument line his father had set in 1948 ran unobstructed from one side to the other, the same as it had run from September of that year until August 2021. The 2 documents on the table said everything that needed to be said about how the road between those monuments had been blocked, and for how long, and why, and who had asked the right question before it happened, and received no answer. Sandra opened her folder and began to speak. Sandra resigned Saturday morning by email. 2 sentences. Stepping down effective immediately. No explanation. She sent it at 9:01 and did not follow up. Miriam read it at 9:40, forwarded it to Cal's office with 1 line. Assuming interim presidency this afternoon. Available by phone at 2 p.m. Cal replied within 10 minutes. Confirmed. She called at 2 exactly. Cal let her speak first. She said no contest on all 3 tracks, and she wanted a full settlement. She asked, "What does Dale need?" Cal presented 5 terms. 1. Full reimbursement of the contractor invoice, Ellis Rourke's survey fees, and all costs associated with the Day 30 removal. Itemized. Paid within 30 days of settlement execution. 2. A recorded acknowledgement, permanent, in the county deed records, that the road was Dale's private easement corridor under RE-1948-004, that the HOA's residents held a right of passage only, and that no management authority, maintenance authority, or construction authority of any kind had ever vested in the HOA under the recorded instrument. 3. The developer's successor entity to reimburse 14 years of road maintenance fees collected without recorded authority, negotiated from the $378,000 aggregate, adjusted for successor liability exposure. Or Dale would maintain the developer claim in the complaint and ask the court for a formal finding on the marketing materials access representations. 4. A permanent recorded instrument confirming Dale's sole maintenance and obstruction removal authority under RE-1948-004, with the HOA's express acknowledgement that any future construction, installation, or surface alteration within the easement corridor required Dale's prior written authorization. 5. Formal recorded withdrawal of the prescriptive management rights claim, with a finding that Dale's 2009 and 2021 certified objection letters establish continuous owner objections sufficient to defeat the theory for the full claimed period. The assertion had been made in writing on HOA letterhead. Its defeat would be in writing in the permanent record. Ellis Rourke, copied on the settlement draft, called Cal the same afternoon with 1 recommendation before he would sign off on the corridor language. A 6th term. A road corridor preservation clause, requiring the HOA to obtain Dale's written authorization before any future construction, signage, or surface alteration within the easement boundary, formalized as a recorded covenant running with the downstream parcel. Cal added it. He called Dale. Dale said yes, without discussion. Frank Daly filed a note with Cal the following Monday. The county permit office had issued the 2021 fence installation permit without verifying the easement instrument. The HOA's permit application had described the site as HOA common area, and the permit office had accepted that description without pulling RE-1948-004. The permit file should carry a notation referencing the recorded instrument and the settlement's findings. Miriam filed the administrative correction herself before the end of the week, in her own name, citing the instrument number and the settlement date. She knew the form. She had been asking the right question before the fence went in. Dale signed Thursday afternoon. 6 instruments, each read completely before the pen touched the signature line. Friday morning, he was in the truck at first light, the county highway end of the road at 6:40. He drove the full length slowly, county highway to ranch house, the 24-foot corridor open in the early light, the stone monuments his father had set in 1948 visible at the easement line on each side, flush with the grade, unchanged. No sign on the left side. No posts, no narrowing. Just the road his father had built, and the corridor his father had recorded, and the monument line that had been exactly where it was supposed to be for 76 years, including the 4 years a gate had crossed it. He parked at the ranch house and opened his logbook. Road clear, 6:48 a.m. RE-1948-004 operational. Matter closed. Lena called that evening. She asked if he was all right. He said he was fine. She asked if the road looked right. He said it looked exactly like it looked when his father built it. She said she would drive up in 2 weeks. He said the guest room was ready. He booked Frank Daly's office for the annual easement inspection before he went to bed. First week of October, same as every year. He set the logbook on the kitchen table, opened to the current page, and turned off the light. Outside, the road ran from the county highway to the ranch house in the dark, 23.9 feet wide, monument to monument, exactly as recorded.